Alright, good afternoon and welcome to the first in a series of videos that is intending to help you understand and revise Shakespeare's play Othello. As I go through, I'm going to be making reference to some assessment objectives. I'm looking at this from the perspective of someone who teaches the AQA spec, so there might be some slight differences if you are studying for another exam board. Hopefully, nevertheless, it will still be quite clear and useful for you as you look through these notes. I've pre-annotated Act 1, Scene 1 of the play, and in today's video I'm just going to be talking through that annotation, making it clear what is taking place in this scene, and just drawing your attention to some of the more interesting aspects of language and context, and touching on a little bit of criticism as well. Alright, so we begin in medias res, a really useful little phrase if you haven't come across it before, which means in the middle of the action. So Shakespeare drops us right into the middle of a conversation between two really important characters, Roderigo, who is a Venetian gentleman, and Iago, who, if you've done any reading about the play at this stage, you will know is the villain of the piece. Now, throughout this scene, we are going to notice that Iago absolutely dominates through his commanding and extensive speech. A mere glance at the page will show you the amount of words that he gets in this scene in comparison to any other character. And we will see throughout the play that Iago essentially uses language as a weapon. He uses it as a tool to control and manipulate all others around him. So at any point that Iago is speaking, he's a threat. From the beginning of the play, we have access to his thoughts right from the very start, and in that sense we have access into the mind of this truly villainous character. Shakespeare almost seduces us into becoming complicit in Iago's evil. We become partially guilty because we are aware of his crimes as he is about to commit them. We're aware of his treacherous acts, what's going on in his mind, and we can see it all unfold. Throughout the play, Iago also speaks in asides and soliloquies to the audience, and again, that draws us closer and closer towards something of an understanding of his character. Even as he is completely repulsive, he is never less than compelling. So, the play begins with an argument between Roderigo and Iago, which is taking place. So right from the very first moments, Shakespeare establishes a sense of conflict. And they are talking about the elopement of Othello, the titular character, our tragic hero, and Desdemona, who is the daughter of a nobleman, the daughter of a Venetian senator. Okay, so we don't know that yet though, so let's begin. Tush, never tell me. Roderigo is frustrated and doesn't quite believe whatever it is that Iago has just been telling him. I take it much unkindly that thou, Iago, who hast had my purse as if the strings were thine, shouldst know of this. So straight away, Shakespeare establishes a power dynamic between these two characters. Iago, for whatever reason, has had access to Roderigo's money, has had access to his purse as if the strings were his. So there is an immediate power dynamic established here. We start to wonder, how has Othello got that power over Roderigo that he has access to his money? And also we start to question what kind of a character Roderigo is that he would allow this. Now, Shakespeare doesn't tell us straight away what it is that they are arguing about. It creates this sense of intrigue and gossip. We wonder what the subject of this conversation is. Iago's first word in the play, suitably, is an oath, sblood, meaning, and you can see this in the annotation here, by Christ's blood, a strong oath. So his first word in the play is a curse. This establishes the crude and vulgar aspect of his personality, which comes through in his conversation with Roderigo. We will also notice, as this play progresses, that Iago is an absolute master of kind of code switching. He's able to modify and control his speech depending on who it is that he's speaking to. He doesn't need to be polite when he's speaking to Roderigo, so he isn't. But you will not hear me, he says. And again, as I mentioned, anytime that Iago is speaking, he is a threat. So when he is asking Roderigo to listen to him, he's asking Roderigo to make himself vulnerable. Not that Roderigo, who believes that he is Iago's friend, will consider that. If ever I did dream of such a matter, abhor me, he says, hate me. Rodrigo says, "Thou toldst me thou didst hold him in thy hate." So now we have established that Iago hates someone, and we later find out that they are speaking about Othello. But at the moment, again, Shakespeare creates this sense of ambiguity. We hear him, we hear his, but we don't know who it is that they are speaking about. So again, we're drawn into this world of intrigue and gossip. We become curious. Thou didst hold him in thy hate. So we know that Iago has strong feelings, a personal grudge against somebody. Who? Iago goes on, "Despise me if I do not," he says. If I'm lying to you, he offers this twice. He says, "Hate me. If I'm lying to you, hate me." Now we are about to discover that Iago is an absolute master of deceit, but here he is being immediately manipulative. He almost offers himself up. If I'm lying to you, he says, I give you permission to hate me. And this is a form of drawing Rodrigo further into his trust. And Iago now goes on to explain the reason that he hates Othello so much. He says, "3 great ones of the city in personal suit to make me his lieutenant off-capped to him, and by the faith of man I know my price, I am worth no worse a place." So he has had 3 respected members of the city, 3 people go and speak for him and try and convince Othello to make Iago his lieutenant. So Iago has used his connections. He's tried to influence Othello to make a decision that will benefit him. He wanted to be Othello's lieutenant. He says, "I know my price. I am worth no worse a place." So he has a powerful sense of his own value, and this is why he is so offended. This is why he has so much loathing for Othello. He has a sense of real bitterness at having not been chosen for this role. He's been passed over for promotion. Now let's work out who has got the job instead. But he, again referring to Othello, as loving his own pride and purposes, so he immediately starts insulting Othello and saying that he's vain, evades them with a bombast circumstance horribly stuffed with epithets of war, and in conclusion, none suits my mediators. "For certes," says he, "I have already chosen my officer." So Othello rejects the advice, the guidance of Othello's chosen advocates, and decides to hire someone else. And what was he? Iago says, "Forsooth, a great arithmetician, one Michael Cassio, a Florentine, a fellow almost damned in a fair wife, that never set a squadron in the field, nor the division of a battle knows more than a spinster, unless the bookish theoric, wherein the togaed consuls can propose as masterly as he." That is to say, this is a list of insults, criticising every aspect of Cassio's suitability for the role. First of all, he calls him a great arithmetician. So he insults Cassio's ability and knowledge. He names him, one Michael Cassio, a Florentine. Now, all of this action is taking place within Venice. Iago and Roderigo are both Venetian, and at the time that the play is set, there were really clear divisions and distinctions between these different areas in Italy. Now, Florence was the centre of commerce and banking, we can see here. So it was a financial capital. So by referring to him by this word Florentine, Iago immediately marks him out as an outsider, not a military man, he implies, but someone better suited to accountancy, calling him an arithmetician, saying his skills should really be in mathematics. He goes on and says he is a fellow almost damned in a fair wife. Now this is interesting because for the rest of the play, if indeed Cassio has a wife, it is never mentioned again. So why this is thrown out in the first page is a little bit enigmatic. But he implies here that Cassio's wife is so beautiful that essentially Cassio is damned by having her. The implication being a beautiful wife is one that you have to watch all the time because you don't know if she's going to be attractive to other men. So immediately here, we're starting to establish some of the hallmarks of Iago's character. He's casually misogynistic. He's almost sort of tribal in his loyalty to Venice, but he sees anyone that is not Venetian as an outsider. And this is something that he holds against Cassio, something that he holds against Othello as well. That never set a squadron in the field, so he suggests that Cassio has a lack of military experience and knows nothing more about battle than an old woman. He goes on to say unless he has read some theory, maybe he's good at reading textbooks and understanding battle from that perspective. He says, mere prattle without practice. Mere talk, just a little bit of talk and no practical skill, no experience. Now, I really like here the repetition of this PR, those plosives, that p sound in prattle and practice, really creates a sense of his disgust. It's almost as though he's spitting these words out. He sums up Cassio's unsuitability for this job in that one simple phrase. Mere prattle without practice is all his soldiership. But he, sir, had the election. But he says to Roderigo, he was chosen instead of me. So, from the very first page, from the opening moments of the play, Shakespeare establishes a major theme, jealousy, and in this case, professional jealousy. And this is something that Iago is going to refer back to on multiple occasions. So, we see really clearly here then why he is so frustrated. This is all compounding his sense of grievance. He goes on, and I, of whom his eyes had seen the proof at Rhodes, at Cyprus, and on other grounds, Christian and heathen, must be lead and calmed by debtor and creditor. This countercaster, he in good time must his lieutenant be, and I, God bless the mark, his moorship's ancient. So he's comparing himself now to Cassio and explaining the ways in which he would have been the superior choice. The fact that Othello has seen him battle at Rhodes, at Cyprus, and on other grounds. So on all of these occasions, Othello has witnessed Iago in battle, and Iago suggests this is all the proof that Othello should need, that I should have been his lieutenant, I should have been his right-hand man. Nevertheless, Cassio has been made the lieutenant, and he says, I, God bless the mark, meaning God help us, this frustration evident here in his speech, his moorship's ancient. Now, an ancient, an ensign, as you can see here from this delightful illustration, is a standard bearer, like a flag bearer. So really not a role that comes with such an amount of prestige. It's a lower ranking position, and Iago is really deeply, deeply offended by this. Now, this phrase, his moorship, comes across as really sneering and sarcastic. Again, this is how he's referring to Othello. Moor refers to where Othello is from, so he is North African. Now, this reveals Iago's preoccupation with Othello's race and colour. Making this into a mocking title reveals his frustration and also reveals his lack of respect for Othello, who is his general, his superior in the military. Roderigo is brought into agreement now with Iago. By heaven, he says, I rather would have been his hangman. Now, there's a really interesting point of context that I just want to touch upon here. Now, hopefully you can see this okay. Here's one I prepared earlier, a little flashcard here. Now, at the time that Othello was written, Venice had a more rigid class structure than England. From this scene onwards, Iago's class envy can be seen quite clearly. He's about to argue against promotions which go by preferment, which are basically chosen based on preference, rather than rewarding merit or allowing people to move up the ranks in a sort of orderly way. So we see here that Iago is really frustrated because he sees that Cassio is the wrong choice and he should have been chosen instead.